Welcome to another episode of Train Lee Installations. Today I'm reviewing this customized Bachman Shay I installed with a ESU decoder and airwire converter receiver in it. The trucks were modified, or the trucks were upgraded and modified so that they do not have any track power pickup. So let me go ahead and start reviewing some of the different functions on this locomotive. So let me go ahead and turn it on. Turn on my airwire transmitter. Now, the locomotive was assigned to address or DCC address of number 5. The decoder was installed underneath in the firebox along with the receiver and the battery in the tender, and I will discuss that in a different segment of the same video. The first one is when you turn it on, the cab light automatically comes on, indicating that the locomotive is actually on. Also, the sound is automatically turned on with it. Of course, 0 for the headlights, and as you can hear, the dynamo spools up for the headlights, and I have it forward direction so the front headlight is on. And then F1, in this case, F1 or 1 is your bell. It's a classic swing bell. F2 is what they call a playable whistle, or it's a dynamic whistle, meaning it has different effects based off of how long you press the button and so on. So F2, if I just briefly press the button, it's a pretty short whistle, but if I hold it, has different effects. F3 is your short whistle. F4 is what they call coupler clank. So F5 is the injector. Now I've changed the functions a little bit. With the decoder, I also installed a pulsed smoke generator, and that is turned on by pressing F6. I just put some fluid in there. Unfortunately, the pulse smoke generator was really designed for a lot more current than the battery produces to produce the heat. I just reversed it so you can see it. Let me see if it'll start puffing. It does produce, it just takes it a minute or two for it to actually finally heat up. While I'm going through some of the others, and hopefully it'll start giving us some smoke. I did use a higher voltage battery and a higher current than what was sent with the locomotive. Oh, there it goes. It's very hard to see without the against the white background. Let me see if there's something I can do to show that smoke off. Okay, that should help a little bit here. I'm going to change the direction and start moving it again. It produces a reasonable beam off of battery. Back that up again. So that is turned on with number 6 or F6. And then after F6 is what they call switching mode, or I might call shunting mode, so that is F7. So that just basically changes how fast the locomotive will go in response. So that's, and then you have what they call is prime mover. That is your main sound, and that is 8 or F8. It turns off the sound, basically. I have it set up so it just automatically turns on when you have power. Let's see, number 9 opens up the cylinder valves, and that is a manual function. So when you start moving, you'll hear the extra hiss. From those cylinder valves. Let's go ahead and turn that off again. It doesn't want to turn off now. That's odd. There we go. Yeah, that should be off. It's kind of funny. So we have, and then you have F10, which is an air pump. And then you have F11, which is a water siphon. I guess that's for drawing water into the tank. Turn that on. F12 for coal shoveling. Most of these are, pretty much all of these sounds are extra default sounds that are included with the sound project. I didn't bother removing them. And that's the basics of it. It has let's see, water fill, brake, set, and release. That's the squealing. Let's see, F14. That should stop the automatic squealing when we stop. Oh, that's a release of the brake. That's that extra hissing from the brakes. And then there's something which they call a blower, ash pan, safety valve, and then as it is an oil burner locomotive, I did choose that. So those are the basic functions on that. And I'm going to take a couple of minutes and review some of the extra things that I've done with this locomotive on how I installed it and set up the battery for it. I'm going to take a minute here to explain kind of how I set this locomotive up. The battery is in the fuel bunker. The decoder and the receiver are in the firebox. Because of the shipping for this locomotive, it arrived without the fuel box or the fuel bunker's cover on it, and I think the roof may have been removed. So, to show off, so when it's operational, when you have it on, using airwire, the airwire is connected. You turn on my airwire. The sound automatically plays. couple of whistles. That's the number 3 whistle. And then you have the number 2 whistle, which does give that extra trill at the end of it at times. Okay, so you probably can't see it. The light, I'll pick it up here. The light in the cab is on. This indicates that it actually has power and the system is on. So go ahead and turn off, pull the roof off temporarily. Here's the power switch. When it is facing the engineer on the right side of the Shay, the switch is on. Go ahead and turn it off. It also sets it up for charging when it's turned off. When it is turned off, you can take the charging cable, remove the cover for the water fuel bunker. I don't know how well you can see that. And the charging port is hidden inside and just plugs in directly in top. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the fuel bunker because it doesn't really, it just sort of sits on there. Now, for transport, I added a connector for the charging port, which will be disconnected when it ships. The battery, and if you notice the battery is already connected, I'll have that tied up nice and neat for shipping. Sits behind the battery. Go ahead and remove the battery. The mount that has the battery there I relatively quickly designed that special mount for the battery. Battery fits in there, and it'll just get taped into with double-sided tape into the base of that so it doesn't wobble around. This mount has your switch on it. Wiring comes through from underneath, and you can change out the battery at a future date if problems, or it can be simply just charged directly from plugging the battery in. So that is the basics of the locomotive, and then once it goes all back together, you notice it will, I'll show this again real quick. There is a slide here in the front, in front of just behind the switch. This locks into the front of the tender, or slides into the slot where the it'd have fake wood there or something like that. I'd be tempted to put a little cover on here to cover up the space, and the tender just, or the fuel bunker just sort of sits there and kind of locks itself in place once it's done. So that's the basics of what I've done.